On today's show, we review teams 29 through 27 in our prospect pool rankings. We'll look at Florida, Vegas, and the New York Islanders in just a second here at Locked On NHL Prospects.
You are Locked On NHL Prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome back to Locked On NHL Prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. On this podcast, we break down everything prospects related for you 5 days a week, Monday to Friday. I'm Hadi Kalakash, joined by Sebastian Heyer, both scouts at Elite Prospects. And on today's show, we'll be breaking down teams 29 through 27 of our prospect pool rankings. We're working our way up the lineup here of the top 30 of the 32 prospect pools in the NHL. So we'll look at Florida in the first segment, Vegas in the second, the Islanders in the third. So remember, just a reminder, criteria that players in these prospect pools need to be under 22 years old or younger, and they need to have played 41 games or fewer in the NHL. Those are the two criteria. Before I get into the episode there, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers can get up to $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. If you're watching on YouTube, as always, remember to like and subscribe. Leave us a comment letting us know what you want us to talk about next, what you think of the episode. And if you're listening on your favorite podcasting platform, please leave us a rate and review and make sure to make us your first listen of the day. And by the way, forgot to mention this in the intro, we're doing top fives for the prospects of each of these teams, of each of the 32 NHL teams. So absolutely worth your while. Let's get started right away with the Florida Panthers here. Last season, they were at 27th in the offseason prospect pool rankings that we did. This season, they're at 29th, so they dropped a couple spots. But still, there's some interesting prospects to talk about here. Let's start at the top there with Mackie Samoskevich being our top prospect from the Florida Panthers. Take it away, Sebastian.
Yeah, Samoskevich is a bunch of fun, and he's a player that we've both really appreciated going back to his draft year with the Chicago Steel, and there was entire development in college hockey with the University of Michigan. This is a 5'11", 190-pound right winger who just played his first season in the AHL last year, and he had a really good rookie campaign there, scoring 22 goals and 54 points through 62 games, even getting into 7 NHL games that year without scoring a single point. He's really skilled, really intelligent. There's a lot of pace behind every decision that he makes on the ice, and he's also very middle-driven with his playmaking ability. The handling ability is clearly, in my opinion, the strongest thing in his offensive toolkit. He's a fantastic puck handler, but do not underestimate his playmaking skill either. There is definitely some top 6 upside in this player in my eyes. More likely on a second line than a first, especially in Florida's system specifically, but a player that I think could complement a guy like Anton Lundell really, really wonderfully. So a lot to be excited for in this profile of player. And there's even a second player in this Florida system who we have ranked second, who is a little bit along the same line stylistically of Mackie Samoskevich, but is a little bit younger. So talk me through Grayson Souchin.
Yeah, Grayson Souchin is a really interesting prospect. I mean, we had a conversation there at number one between Samoskevich and Souchin. That gives you a good idea of how much we love these two prospects. But yeah, Souchin is really interesting because of ability as well. He's a very, very good handler of the puck. He's able to shift defenses really well, uses his handling skill to open up passing lanes, to open up shooting lanes. That's what makes him such an interesting prospect overall in terms of his handling skill. But he's not just handling skill either. Let's start with the size, 5'11", 165 pounds, so technically undersized there as a right shot center. He was drafted in the second round, late in the second round of the 2023 NHL draft, a prospect who I think we both had in our top 20s. I think we were both big fans of him.
If he wasn't top 20, he was very close. He was in that mix for sure.
Absolutely. And yeah, he's a very, very good handler with great skill on that side, but he's also a decent skater. He's got a good shot. He's a great playmaker as well. The only real lacking in Souchin's game for me is the physical aspect, right? I mean, he's not necessarily a polished physical player, but he gets around it fairly well with his ability to play evasively with and without the puck. He's a good off-puck mover, but even better at evading checks on the puck. He's so difficult to trap, to pin, to hit overall. You know, you can't, when you're a small player, you need to have that. And I think Souchin has that in spades, that evasive skill. Let's move to a completely different prospect here. And Linus Eriksson, who's our third ranked prospect in the Florida Panthers prospect pool. Talk me through his game, because he's a prospect that you put me on. And the moment I watched him, I knew exactly what you were talking about in terms of the abilities.
Yeah, he's awesome. I love this player, but stylistically extremely different to the last two
Yeah.
guys. Linus Eriksson is a two-way center to his core. He's 6 foot tall, 190 pounds. He's a left shot centerman who was drafted 58th overall in the second round just a couple months ago by the Florida Panthers. And he's been developing in the Jurgenens system over in Sweden, splitting his time between Hockey Allsvenskan, which is the second tier of professional hockey in Sweden, as well as the J20. And his play with Jurgenens in Allsvenskan was phenomenal. He was incredibly strong on both ends of the ice. He's a really good like play connector and passer in the offensive zone. He gets the best out of his teammates. I really liked his U18 World Championship performance as well for Team Sweden as their captain, where he scored a goal and 6 assists for 7 points in 7 games. And overall, he's a player that elevates more skill guys. So while he's not a player that's going to handle through an entire defensive structure on his own, or is going to like score off a slap shot from the blue line, he's definitely able to get the puck to dangerous positions and dangerous players, while also having a bit of a gravitational pull on the opposition because he is so poised and patient with possession on his stick. He's able to really have defenses collapse around him and find a very simple pass to get the puck into space for a teammate to create with it. He's really intelligent. He's really refined and polished. I think he has a long NHL career ahead of him, and he might even be an NHLer within 2 years' time. There's a lot to like in his profile, and I think that Florida got a really, really good value pick here in the second round. They traded up for that player specifically. They did not ever originally have a second round pick entering the draft, and I think they targeted a really good player, not only for their system, but also for their needs and their overall prospect depth.
Absolutely. I think for me, it's the combination of intelligence, composure, and motor. It's a great, great foundation for the skill set that
Yeah.
Erickson has, which is to be a defensive center. But let's move right on to Jack Devine, who's a very interesting prospect, drafted in the 7th round in the 2022 NHL draft. Was playing in the NCAA in his draft year, which even 2 years ago wasn't really as common as it's been since then. And especially for a guy who's drafted in the 7th round, he did have his limitations. He wasn't the best skater. He wasn't the biggest body either. In terms of frame, we're talking about a prospect who is, give me 1 second, 5'11", 181 pounds as a right winger. But in the 2 years after that, after posting 19 points in 36 games in the NCAA in his draft year, he went to 31 points in 38 games last season, and now 56 points in 44 games on the championship winning Denver Pioneers. And he was their scoring leader by 6 points. So to go from a 7th round pick, it was a half a point a game in this draft year, to by far the scoring leader on the Pioneers was great. And I think all of that has to do with the consistent improvement of his motor. He was already a high motor player in his draft year. It's only gotten better since then. His skating's improved relatively well. His goal scoring ability especially has taken great leaps since his draft year. He's become a true around the net, inside driven type of goal scorer, and it works really well with his skill set. The chemistry he developed with Zeev Buium, with Massimo Rizzo in Denver was really key to them winning the championship. He was a very important player for them. And overall, just really kind of came out of his shell in the past couple of years. So he's really interesting. And last but not least, for the top 5 here, we have Justin Soldiff. Take it away on Justin Soldiff. I think you're a bigger fan of him than I am.
I think so, though I think that you are especially low on him among the scouting community here. Sort of is a 5'11", 173-pound right shot centerman who just played his first professional season in the AHL with the Charlotte Checkers, where he scored 12 goals and 38 points through 58 games. He also got into 3 NHL games where he did not log a point, but he has a really powerful and adaptable release as a shooter. I like the shot a lot mechanically. He's a good puck handler as well. There are definitely some offensive tools in his toolkit that shine, though I would say that there's nothing in his toolkit that is incredibly dominant or really, really bright in terms of like a key tool to build around long term. He really is a player that has a lot of different types of strengths, and he's very adaptable, and he's good, and he can do many different things quite well, which I definitely think makes him more of a bottom 6 or third line projection in terms of the offensive impact, and adding some more depth scoring, which is why he features in here at the bottom of our top 5, because we do see a little bit more upside in terms of impact with guys like Linus Eriksson and Jack Devine, but still a player who has gotten into NHL games at the age of 22, 21. So a player that I would definitely keep an eye open for in terms of having an NHL impact for the Florida Panthers in the coming couple of seasons already. And he definitely has enough skill to be a good depth scorer. But we also have two honorable mentions that we want to give shout outs to. Two players I watched quite a bit this past season covering the European batch of the 2024 draft class. And that would be Simon Zetter, a 6'3" centerman with pretty good defensive habits who played a lot better at the SHL level than against his own age group, in my opinion, even though his scoring numbers were excellent against his own age group because, well, he's really big and that helps a lot when you're playing at the J20 level. But a really decent defensive piece. His habits are relatively refined and he gets the net front really, really well. He's a good net front presence and he times his net front implications really well. So a couple nice things to work around with Simon Zetter. And the other player is Matvei Shurovin, a really good rush defender who was defending the rush at an above average capacity against KHL competition last year already as a draft eligible, which was very impressive, but everything in the on-puck area of his game is a massive question mark. He was a turnover machine, really hesitant and panicky under any sign of pressure. Definitely had some puck over glass penalties that were incredibly avoidable last season. And I don't think that his passing or shooting or any offensive ability is anywhere even really near average, let alone above average. So a lot of question marks still in his development. But if Florida is able to mold him into a pure transition defender on a bottom pairing where he really is a specialist at plugging gaps and stopping the rush, I do see an NHL future for this player. I just think that we were seeing some first round hype earlier on in the year, and the on-puck game just never took the step to really match that, which is why he ended up being a third round draft choice. But that wraps up this first segment on the Florida Panthers, and we'll be right back in the second, breaking down the prospect pool of the Vegas Golden Knights, who have one big gem of a prospect and a lot of other pieces beyond that, but who aren't quite as certain in terms of upside. But first, a quick word from our sponsors over at FanDuel. We've been talking a lot to you about FanDuel, and we continue to boost our offer that until now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a free 3-week trial of the NFL Sunday Ticket on YouTube and YouTube TV. With the YouTube TV-based plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. Whether you want to take your swings on American football or even European football with the Champions League kicking off within the next couple of weeks now and all the big leagues getting going, the choice is yours. Or maybe you prefer golf or tennis. Whatever your sport of choice may be, FanDuel has offers for you that will be up your alley. Just visit FanDuel.com and download America's #1 sportsbook.
Alrighty, so moving on to our second segment here, we'll be talking about the Vegas Golden Knights here at 28th overall. And last season, they were at 28, so they haven't budged an inch here in our prospect pool rankings since last year, despite adding a decent piece there at the top end of their prospect pool. Let's start off with that key kind of high upside type of player that they added at 19th overall in the 2024 NHL draft, Trevor Connelly. Talk me through his game overall. What makes him such an interesting player? There's a lot to work with here, but there's also some concerns as well, right?
Certainly. Connelly is a hyper-skilled 6'1", 161-pound left shot left winger who, as you mentioned, was just drafted this season after scoring 31 goals and 78 points through 52 games for the Tri-City Storm in the USHL. He also scored 4 goals and 9 points in 7 games at the U18 World Championships. This season, Trevor Connelly really showed a high degree of goal-scoring acumen, goal-scoring ability, really lethal release and shot. He's also diversified his shooting arsenal a lot more. He's learned how to really be able to veil when he is timing his release. He's gotten pretty good at using defenders as screens or fly by teammates as screens for his shot. But the big thing he did in his game this season was add a massive degree of playmaking to his game. He's always been a really good pure shooter, but the playmaking game really took a massive step. He got a bunch of primary assists this season, was almost a bit of a primary assist merchant at times, going for the Hail Mary pass rather than making progressive play to just build up play normally up the ice. He likes to speed up the wing. He's a fantastic skater. He's really, really fast. Fantastic puck handler as well. So he's a guy that loves to go end to end and really challenge defenses and try to get around them, get through them, and really use his high degree of offensive tools to do so. Yeah. Beyond that, there are some question marks in terms of character. I think at this point, we've all heard the stories. We don't have to delve deep in this episode on that. But beyond just that, I mean, also at the aforementioned U18 World Championships, he took the really unnecessary 5-minute major penalty that led to the turnaround of that game. Canada was behind at the time of the penalty, and they won relatively easily at the end because they had a full 5-minute power play. When you have the level of talent that Team Canada had there with guys like Gavin McKenna, that was a death sentence.
Absolutely. That brings us to number 2 here. We have Carl Lindbaum, a goalie who was drafted 222nd overall in 2021, is the second best prospect in the pool for Vegas. That's not a knock on the pool itself, even though it is in the bottom 5 or 6 of our pools. It's still just a really good compliment and quality to Carl Lindbaum, who's developed really, really well since being drafted in the 7th round. This past season in the SHL, he put up a .911 save percentage with Färjestad, and a 2.12 goals against average, which isn't bad at all for a goalie. Again, was drafted in the 7th round. He's progressed really well. He's got great puck tracking skills. He's a great skater with really solid hands, and he uses that to cover the upper end of the net, wherever shots are coming from, whether it's a tipped point shot, whether it's a shot in tight. The combination of skating and hands just helps him stay down in the butterfly pretty liberally, and still being able to kind of cover the top end of the net with just a great blocker, a great glove hand, especially. That combination of skills is very, very useful for him. So for me, I think I'd say he's one of Vegas's best shots at a kind of impact player moving forward. Who got a decent shot at that, and that's why he's second in our rankings. Let's move on to our third player in our rankings, Brendan Brisson, who hasn't really progressed exactly the way we thought he would, but he's still a player with some really key tools in his shooting and handling skill. He's a great shooter in motion. He combines his hands with his shot incredibly well to fire in motion, to curl and drag shots around defenders and through goaltenders. That's kind of the bread and butter of his game, but he's also a decent playmaker as well. Now, he did kind of stagnate a tiny bit, even though he did play 15 games in the NHL and put up 8 points. This past season in the AHL was pretty much exactly what we expected of him in terms of production. 19 goals, 19 assists for 38 points in 52 games. As an undersized player at 5'11", 179 pounds, he's still got some room to kind of improve his game as well, to become a better skater, a better physical player. But the puck skills are certainly there, and that makes him an interesting prospect for me. And we had a conversation there at second overall between Lindbaum and Brisson, but Lindbaum brings a level of impact, pretty much certainty, that Brisson doesn't necessarily bring, even though Brisson's already played NHL games. Let's go to fourth. Matías Sapovalov makes our top 5 here. Talk me through his game. What makes him so interesting here at fourth?
Yeah, so Sapovalov is a really toolsy 6'4", 194-pound centerman. He's a left shot who was picked in the 2nd round 2 years ago by Vegas at 48th overall. And he's been developing in the OHL for the last couple seasons with the Saginaw Spirit on a road to a Memorial Cup victory just this past year. And on a point production basis, not the most outstanding of players in the world. I mean, he put up 62 points in 54 games as a D+2 this past season in the OHL, as well as 9 points in 17 playoff games. But it's not the raw point production that really brings a lot of value for Shapovalov. He's a really good facilitator. He's a good line connector. He does a lot of the dirty work. He's able to go into corners and win board battles. He's a really technically skilled playmaker as well, especially in terms of making perhaps the secondary assist rather than the primary. He's really good at creating a decent amount of space in pockets for teammates with his passing. More often, those teammates are in playmaking positions themselves rather than goal-scoring positions, but a really good player in terms of just finding his own role, his own ability to make an impact in whatever situation he finds himself in. He's been really good internationally for Czechia as well at the World Juniors for the last couple of seasons, and has always found a way to adapt and really be an impactful piece on a top line more often than not for Czechia. And beyond that, I think he's a really decent bottom six projection long term for Vegas. But for the next player, the last one in our top five, we have a goaltender who was just drafted in Pavel Moisevich, a 6'5", 187-pound left-catching goaltender who put up some ridiculous numbers last season, split between the KHL and the VHL as a 19-year-old goalie. So he was picked as a D+1, so he was an overager, which certainly skews the numbers a little bit. But he was playing in the SKA St. Petersburg system last year, and always an asterisk there in terms of goaltending numbers. Often goaltenders in SKA system play about half a game. They like to rotate their goaltenders a decent amount, and it's also the SKA system. There's a lot of quality here, so the numbers are just a bit more inflated by virtue of that alone. But still, in 13 KHL appearances, they put up a .942 save percentage, and in 19 VHL appearances, he put up a .927. He's a really athletic goaltender. He's really massive. He likes to stay pretty shallow deep in his crease because he has such a big body, and his reflexes and reactions are an area of strength. And overall, a lot of room to grow still in his development, and a lot of steps he still has to take before he's an NHL caliber goaltender. But I think if you give him 4 or 5 years, he's going to be an impactful piece in the system in some capacity. Whether he's a starting goaltender, a backup, or an AHL starter remains to be seen. But I think he's a prospect worthy of note. And yeah, last but not least, talk us through our last honorable mentions here for the Vegas Golden Knights.
Yeah, a couple of QMJHLers. Matthew Cataford, who played with Halifax for a while. He's an interesting player. I don't really see him as kind of I don't see really the standout tools of him, but he's fairly intelligent, really good at moving off the puck and finding space, which worked really well with the players that they had in that system at the time. And Lucas Cormier is the other one, who's a left shot defenseman, 5'10". I still believe in his skill set, even though he's 22 and still kind of, hasn't pierced full time in the NHL. I still think that there's something there with Cormier. It's just his reads, his ability to time his activations and transition is so good. It goes beyond just pure tools. He's a great skater, yes. He's a great handler, yes. But it's really the intelligence, the awareness, the timing of his game that really makes him run. So I think there's still an NHLer here and a long-term one as well. But that's our second segment done. We'll get into the third segment where we look at the New York Islanders at 27th overall in our prospect pool rankings. But just before, a quick word from our sponsors here at Locked On NHL Prospects. Alrighty, so let's close things off here with our final segment. We'll be talking about the New York Islanders here at 27th overall in our prospect pool rankings. And there's an obvious standout player here at the top end, a very different player from the rest of their prospect pool here. We have Cole Eiserman as the top prospect in the New York Islanders system. Another player, kind of like the Vegas Golden Knights, where they have one big guy at the top who has an incredible upside, but just as much risk involved in his projection there. So talk me through Eiserman and why he is the best prospect in the Islanders list, and also why we might have a bit of questions about his progression.
Absolutely. I mean, Cole Eiserman is the only player in this prospect pool that has quite clear top pairing upside. So that immediately just rocketed him into the first slot here. That said, while his shot is among the best we've seen come through the draft in the last, 3-5 years, it is exceptionally good. He can score from anywhere in the offensive zone. Like just a wicked and diverse set of releases. Like the shooting element of his game is fantastic. He's also very young for the draft class, just 2 weeks off of being eligible for the 2025 draft. So you got to keep that in mind a little bit here as well. But beyond the pure goal scoring, as well as the long development, like room to grow for him, there's very little but question marks remaining for Cole Eiserman. There have been flashes of him being able to use his physicality to really up his game in the offensive zone, drive the net, get to the dangerous areas, lower the shoulder a little bit. But the consistency behind that was really lacking. Same can be said about his passing ability as well. In flashes, he's been a really good playmaker, but there are more games than not where he hogs possession and just fires off pucks and gets possession away extremely easily whenever he enters the offensive zone. Defensively, he is a non-factor. He goes control or disconnected more often than not. He's really disengaged and doesn't really seem to even read defensive structures or read play in his own defensive zone very well in terms of even like timing the breakout, timing when he wants to go cherry pick and bolt the zone a bit early. A lot of issues in his game still. He's very raw in many ways, which on the one hand gives him a lot of room to grow in development. So the upside is still massive with this player, but the certainty is a lot murkier. So a player that we've had a lot of discussions about for the entirety of the last year. And I don't know if the Islanders are the best organization to foster his development, because he will need a lot of hands-on development to succeed, in my opinion. But Boston University is a great place for him to go for his development, and I'm sure he'll be scoring a lot of goals this season.
Absolutely. That brings us to number 2 in our prospect pool rankings. Another prospect that they added in the 2024 NHL draft, Jesse Pulkkinen. Another player who, in terms of upside, is up there with the best there in the pool. I think overall, Pulkkinen has such a fantastically unique game. He was this year's unicorn, in my opinion. It all really starts with the frame at 6'6", 207 pounds. Massive player. He was an overager. Really skilled player as well for his size. Super confident in his hands. I've seen him do spinorimas into backhand passes to the slot. He's a very confident player in his own abilities. Absolutely ragdolled the J20 level in Finland, and then quickly graduated to a loan to the second division in Finland, which is second pro division rather, which is Mestis, and then was very good there as well, to the point where his team said, okay, we've had enough, you can come and join our pro team. And that's where he spent the rest of his season. And just a really good defensive player, very physical, very daring with the puck, great playmaker, great shooter, great handler. The combination of puck skills with the frame is amazing. The only thing really is his skating isn't the best. He has the long, kind of heavy strides. That's pretty usual for a player this size, so I'm not too worried about that. At third in the prospect pool rankings here for the Islanders, we have Danny Nelson, who is about as surefire an NHLer as you can get. He's the most New York Islanders pick I can think of in this list. Just a very smart, very responsible, very physical two-way center who plays a very north-south kind of meat and potatoes game. He's got a decent frame at 6'3", 212 pounds as well. Was drafted in the at 49th overall in the 2023 NHL draft. Like I said, a very Islanders pick. That's the thing with the Islanders and why they're higher up the rankings than the Golden Knights or the Panthers, is that they have the same high-end upside prospect at the top end there. And, the Knights have Trevor Connelly. The Isles have Cole Eiserman. Quite similar in terms of upside. But beyond that, with the Islanders, it's really the depth of the amount of potential NHLers they have. So we mentioned Danny Nelson. There's Isaiah George, who's 4th overall in our rankings there, who's looking really good. And you're a big fan of him as well. Very indeed. Projectable, very smart, two-way, defensive defenseman mainly. 6 foot, 196 pounds, uses his skating really well to defend the rush. And we have the complete opposite pretty much in Kallio Delia. So another great skater with great physical tools, yes, but he uses it offensively. He uses it to push up the ice, to carry pucks up the ice. His progression hasn't been as good as George's in the past couple of years, right? So that's why we have him lower.
He missed most of last year to injury. Like he only got into 10 games for Jurgen's last year, so
that can't help. Absolutely. And then we just have a laundry list of potential NHLers: Camille Bednarik, Justin Gill, Alex Jeffries, Matthew Maggio. The list is long and extensive of potential NHLers. So what makes the Islanders the better of these three pools? It's the depth. It's the amount of options they have. The Knights can't match it. The Panthers certainly can't match it. That's what kind of separates them in that range. And that's why they went from 32 last year. They were the worst prospect pool in our rankings last year to now being 27th, because they finally added two very, very key pieces at the top end there in Eiserman and Pulkkinen, right?
Absolutely. I think, going back to Pulkkinen real quick, I don't think the entirety of last season through my draft viewings, there was, apart from Ivan Demidov in the MHL, there was nothing sillier in my viewings than Jesse Pulkkinen at the U20 Finnish hockey level. It was hilarious.
You ragdolled them. He just straight up ragdolled them.
It's a 6'6" man who was really skilled and very daring, playing against a really weak junior league, and it was really ugly and entertaining at the same time whenever I had those viewings. So very happy that he is playing full-time in Liga at this point, and I think that he's going to be a really good fit with the Islanders. He brings a profile of defenseman that they just don't have in their system in the NHL or among the prospects at all, and I think that's very valuable to add.
Absolutely. But that's our episode done. Thank you very much for tuning in. If you're watching on YouTube, remember to like and subscribe. Leave us a comment letting us know what you think of our rankings, what you think of the episode, all that good stuff. Just keep it civil and respectful. And if you're listening on your favorite podcasting platform, please leave us a rating review and make sure to make us your first listen of the day. For your second listen of the day, make sure to check out Locked On Sports Today. They've got all your news and updates about what's going on around sports on YouTube's first 24/7 sports channel. And make sure to tune in for our future shows as we continue our prospect pool rankings, work our way down to the best pool in the NHL. This has been Hattie Kalakash with Sebastian High, Scouts at Elite Prospects, and we hope you tune in next time.